You are 18 years old, and you believe in justice. Your name is Marcus Venn, born and raised in the middle hive of Tertium Prime, a densely populated industrial world where crime is rampant and order feels like a distant dream. You've grown up watching gang violence in the streets, seeing merchants extorted by protection rackets, witnessing corruption in the local enforcers who take bribes and look the other way while the innocent suffer. You want to be different. You want to make things right. You want to be someone who stands between the lawless and the law-abiding, someone who protects those who cannot protect themselves. You believe in the Imperium's promise, that law and order are the foundations of civilization, that justice serves the Emperor's will, that those who enforce the law are heroes standing against chaos. So when the Adeptus Arbites recruitment officers come to your hive, you're first in line. The Arbites are legendary, the Imperium's premier law enforcement organization, operating independently of local government, answering only to the highest authorities on Terra itself. They're incorruptible, impartial, absolute in their dedication to justice. Or so you've been told. The recruitment process is intensive. Physical testing that pushes candidates to their breaking points. Psychological evaluation that probes every aspect of your personality and beliefs. Background checks that examine your entire life history, your family's loyalty record, your genetic lineage for signs of instability or mutation. You pass everything, your physical conditioning is excellent. Years of navigating the dangerous middle hive have made you strong, fast, reflexive. Your psychological profile shows exactly what they're looking for. Commitment to order, respect for authority, willingness to make hard decisions, capacity for violence tempered by discipline. Your family has an impeccable loyalty record. 3 generations of faithful Imperial citizens who've never shown any sign of heretical tendencies. The recruitment officer who delivers your acceptance is a towering figure in black carapace armor, his face hidden behind a helm that shows only cold optics. Cadet Venn, you have been accepted into the Adeptus Arbites. You will report to training facility Sigma 7-9 within 48 hours. Your service begins now. The Emperor protects those who enforce his law. Your family is proud. Your father, a factory shift supervisor, actually cries when you tell him, "My son, an Arbites judge, you'll bring honor to our name. You'll make the Imperium safer. You'll be a hero." Your younger brother looks at you with awe. You're going to stop the criminals, keep people safe? That's the plan, you tell him, believing every word. You have no idea what you're actually signing up for. The training facility is on a different world entirely, a dedicated Arbites fortress monastery where new recruits are transformed from civilians into judges. The journey takes 2 weeks in the cramped transport hold, packed with other recruits from across the sector. You're all young, all idealistic, all believing you're about to become heroes. The reality begins on day 1. The training judges who receive you are not inspirational leaders. They're brutal taskmasters who view you as raw material to be shaped through pain and conditioning. The first thing they do is strip away your civilian identity. You are no longer Marcus Venn, your training judge announces. His name is Callus, a scarred veteran with 40 years of service visible in every line of his face. You are Cadet 1738. Your civilian name is irrelevant. Your family is irrelevant. Your past is irrelevant. You exist only to serve the law. You will be rebuilt according to our specifications. If you cannot meet our standards, you will be dismissed or dead. We care which only insofar as dead recruits require paperwork. The physical training is beyond anything you imagined. 18-hour days of combat drills, endurance running, strength conditioning, weapons training. You learn to fight with shock mauls, combat shotguns, suppression shields, riot equipment. You learn to function in full carapace armor despite the weight and restricted movement. You learn to operate in hostile environments, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, combat zones. The training kills people. 2 recruits die in your first month. 1 from heart failure during an endurance test, another from a training accident involving live ammunition. The bodies are removed efficiently, and training continues without pause. No ceremony, no acknowledgement beyond recording the casualties in daily reports. This is not cruelty, Judge Callis explains during a rare moment of instruction rather than punishment. This is necessity. The law must be enforced in environments that will kill you if you're weak. We cannot afford to send weak judges into the field. Better you die here than fail when civilians depend on you. You believe him. You push yourself harder, determined to be strong enough, good enough, dedicated enough. You watch other recruits break, some physically, collapsing under the impossible demands, others, mentally, developing nervous conditions or outright psychological breaks. Those who break are removed, their fates unknown and unquestioned. The legal indoctrination runs parallel to physical training, hours every day studying imperial law, learning the codes and regulations that govern the Imperium. The Lex Imperialis is vast beyond comprehension. Millions of laws covering every conceivable situation, accumulated over 10,000 years, often contradictory, always absolute. You learn that imperial law is not about justice in any conventional sense. It's about compliance, about maintaining order at any cost, about ensuring that the Imperium's vast machinery continues functioning regardless of individual circumstances or suffering. The law serves the Imperium, Judge Callis intones during legal instruction. The Imperium serves the Emperor, therefore the law serves the Emperor. Your duty is to enforce that law absolutely, without mercy or compromise. Mercy is weakness. Compromise is heresy. You are the law's instrument. You exist only to enforce. You struggle with some of the laws you're taught. Laws that mandate execution for minor infractions. Laws that punish entire families for one member's crimes. Laws that grant Arbites judges absolute authority to determine guilt and administer punishment without trial or appeal. But what about justice, you ask during one session? The question earns you immediate punishment. 50 lashes with a shock maul, administered in front of your fellow cadets as an example. Justice, Judge Callis says as you scream, is whatever the law defines it to be. You do not question, you do not interpret, you enforce. If you cannot understand this, you cannot serve. You learn to stop questioning, to accept what you're taught without examination, to recite legal codes and enforcement protocols until they're automatic, until you can cite them without conscious thought. Indoctrination, though you don't recognize it as such. You think you're learning. You're actually being programmed. The loyalty conditioning is the most insidious part of training. Constant reinforcement that the Arbites are incorruptible, that the law is absolute, that questioning orders is the first step toward heresy. You attend daily prayer sessions where you recite oaths of service. You study examples of corrupt law enforcement who showed mercy or exercised independent judgment. Their fates are held up as warnings of what happens when judges fail to enforce absolutely. The Arbites are the Imperium's immune system, Judge Callis explains. We destroy anything that threatens the body politic. Crime, sedition, heresy, all are diseases that must be purged. You are antibodies. You do not negotiate with disease, you destroy it. The metaphor resonates with you. You begin to internalize it. Criminals aren't people making bad choices in difficult circumstances. They're diseases threatening the Imperium. Your role isn't to rehabilitate or understand, it's to destroy. 6 months into training, you've changed. You're harder, colder, more disciplined. You've internalized the brutal logic of Arbites enforcement. You've accepted that the law is absolute, that mercy is weakness, that your duty is to enforce regardless of personal feelings. You've forgotten what justice actually means. Or perhaps you've learned a new definition, one where justice is synonymous with order, where individual rights are irrelevant, where the law's demands supersede all other considerations. If you're already seeing the transformation beginning, the idealism being ground away, like this video and subscribe. Comment below where you're watching from today. Let me know you're bearing witness to this brutal education. Year 1 of training concludes with final examinations. Combat assessment against training servitors programmed to simulate hostile targets. Legal examination covering thousands of laws and enforcement protocols. Loyalty verification through psychic probing and interrogation. Practical assessment, where you're placed in simulated enforcement scenarios and evaluated on your decisions. You pass everything. Your combat scores are excellent. Your legal knowledge is comprehensive. Your loyalty is beyond question. Your practical assessments show exactly what they want to see. Absolute enforcement without hesitation. No mercy for violators. Complete dedication to the law's letter, regardless of circumstances. You graduate. From a class of 300 recruits, only 74 survive to receive their judge's badge. The attrition rate doesn't disturb you anymore. Weakness has been culled. Only the strong remain, only those dedicated enough to do what's necessary. The graduation ceremony is brief and formal. You receive your uniform, black carapace armor emblazoned with the Arbites eagle. You receive your weapons, a combat shotgun, a shock maul, a sidearm for close quarters work. You receive your badge, a golden aquila that grants you absolute authority to enforce imperial law across the galaxy. Judge Callus addresses the graduating class. You are Arbites judges now. You are the law incarnate. You have absolute authority within your jurisdiction. You answer only to the Adeptus Arbites chain of command and the Emperor himself. You will enforce the law without fear or favor. You will show no mercy to violators. You will accept no compromise. You will serve until death. The Emperor protects those who enforce his law. You recite the oath of service. Every word is burned into your memory from months of repetition. I am the law's instrument. I enforce without mercy. I serve without question. I judge without bias. I am the Arbites. The Emperor's will be done. You believe it. Every word. You're ready to serve. Ready to enforce justice across the Imperium. Ready to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. Ready to be a hero. You have no idea what's actually waiting for you. No concept of what enforcing imperial law really means. No understanding that the oath you just swore binds you to atrocities you can't yet imagine. Your first assignment arrives 3 days after graduation. Hive World Draconis 7. Assigned to Precinct Fortress Gamma, serving under Judge Captain Vardis. A standard posting for a new judge-urban environment. High crime rate, complex jurisdiction requiring constant enforcement. You board the transport with 11 other new judges, all fresh from training, all eager to begin their service. You're excited, nervous, proud. You're going to make a difference. You're going to enforce justice. You're going to protect Imperial citizens from those who would harm them. The journey to Draconis 7th takes 3 weeks. You spend the time reviewing legal codes specific to Hive World jurisdiction, studying crime patterns and enforcement protocols, preparing yourself mentally for the challenges ahead. The other new judges speculate about their coming service, what crimes they'll encounter, what criminals they'll bring to justice, what difference they'll make in their assigned territories. Everyone is optimistic. Everyone believes they're about to begin heroic careers. None of you understand what's coming. None of you recognize that your training has prepared you not to protect and serve, but to suppress and destroy. None of you realize that the justice you're about to enforce is simply tyranny wearing a legal uniform. You arrive at Draconis the 7th full of hope and purpose. The illusions will begin shattering within hours. The idealist who believed in justice will begin his transformation into something much darker. The hero you thought you'd become will be replaced by the brutal enforcer the Imperium actually needs. Your real education is about to begin, and it will be far more horrifying than anything you experienced in training. Draconis II is a nightmare made manifest. The hive cities rise impossibly high, spires reaching into toxic atmospheres, while billions live in the darkness below. The middle and lower hives are overcrowded beyond reason, people packed into spaces barely fit for habitation, working brutal shifts in manufactorums and processing facilities that consume human lives as casually as they consume raw materials. You report to Precinct Fortress Gamma, a massive structure built into the hive's lower middle section. The fortress is designed to withstand siege, walls 10 meters thick, automated defenses, holding cells that can accommodate thousands of prisoners. It looks like a military installation, not a law enforcement facility. You'll soon understand why. Judge Captain Vardis receives you in his command chamber. He's a veteran of 30 years' service, his armor scarred from countless engagements, his face bearing the marks of someone who's seen too much and hardened himself against it. He looks at you and the other new judges with something approaching pity. You're fresh from training, so you still believe in justice, he says bluntly. That idealism will be beaten out of you within a month. This is not the academy, this is not simulation, this is enforcement in a hive where 15 billion people compete for resources that might sustain 5 billion. Starvation, desperation, violence, these are daily facts. Your job is not to fix any of this. Your job is to maintain order despite it. Do you understand? You nod, though you don't really understand. Not yet. Your first week will be orientation, Vardis continues. You'll accompany veteran judges on patrol, observe enforcement operations, learn how things actually work. Pay attention. The mistakes you make will cost lives, probably yours. Dismissed, you're assigned to Judge Sergeant Corvin, a 15-year veteran with a reputation for brutal efficiency. He's a large man, his armor covered in tally marks, kill counts you'll learn later. He looks you over with obvious skepticism. Another academy graduate who thinks he's going to save the Imperium, Corvin mutters. All right, kid, stay close, keep your shotgun ready, and don't question my orders. You'll see things today that weren't covered in training. Try not to vomit on your new armor. Your first patrol is through the lower middle hive, a region designated Sector 47. The living conditions shock you immediately. People crammed into corridors that serve as streets, homes, and marketplaces simultaneously. The smell is overwhelming. Human waste, rotting food, industrial chemicals, desperation. Thousands of people moving through impossibly crowded spaces, all of them gaunt, exhausted, hollow-eyed. 15 million people in this sector alone, Corvin explains as you walk. The crowds part before you, not respectfully, but with fear. People see the Arbites' armor and flee. Survival rate to age 40 is about 30%. Most die from industrial accidents, disease, or violence. The survivors produce enough output to make the sector economically viable. That's all that matters to the administratum. You see crimes happening openly. Theft, assault, extortion. You move to intervene, but Corvin stops you. We don't have jurisdiction over local crime, he says. That's for the local enforcers. We only handle crimes against the Imperium itself. Treason, sedition, tax evasion, tithe violations, heresy. Everything else is someone else's problem. But those people are suffering, you protest. We could help them. Could we? Corvin challenges. There are 200 Arbite judges in this fortress responsible for a hive of 15 billion. Even if we wanted to police local crime, we couldn't. We'd be overwhelmed in hours. Our role is to keep the Imperium functioning, not to solve every local problem. The sooner you understand that, the sooner you'll be effective. The logic makes sense, but it feels wrong. You joined the Arbites to help people, but you're walking past suffering without intervening, because your jurisdiction is narrowly defined and your resources are limited. On day 3, you encounter your first real enforcement situation. A crowd has gathered in a massive public square. Thousands of people, their voices rising in angry protest. They're chanting about food shortages, about reduced rations, about children dying from malnutrition while the upper hive lives in luxury. Riot formation, Corvin orders. You and 5 other judges deploy in standard suppression pattern, shields forward, shotguns ready, positioned to control the crowd's movement. Corvin activates his Voxhaler. This is an illegal gathering. Disperse immediately. Return to your habitation units. You have 60 seconds to comply. The crowd doesn't disperse. They're too desperate, too angry. Someone throws a piece of debris. It bounces harmlessly off Corvin's shield. But it's enough. That's assault on an Arbites judge. That's a capital crime. Lethal force authorized, Corvin announces calmly. Suppression pattern Delta, fire. The order doesn't make sense. These aren't criminals. They're just hungry people protesting impossible conditions. You hesitate, your shotgun raised but not firing. Around you, the other judges don't hesitate. Shotguns roar. The crowd's front rank explodes into blood and screaming. People fall, bodies torn apart by mass reactive shells. The protesters panic, trying to flee, trampling each other in their desperation to escape. Fire, damn you! Corvin shouts at you. That's an order. Your training takes over. You pull the trigger. Your shotgun kicks against your shoulder. You see a man's chest explode, see him fall. You fire again. And again. People are running, dying, screaming. You're killing them. These aren't soldiers or criminals. They're civilians. And you're executing them for the crime of being hungry. The suppression takes 7 minutes. When it's over, 234 people are dead. Most of them crushed in the panic, but dozens killed directly by Arbites fire. You've personally killed 16. You counted each one, unable to stop counting. Unable to process what you just did. Corvin claps you on the shoulder. Good work, Judge. You showed appropriate restraint. Some of the new recruits empty entire magazines. You maintained fire discipline. The Emperor protects. Restraint. He called it restraint. You killed 16 people, including 3 children who couldn't escape fast enough. And he's praising your restraint. They were just hungry, you say, your voice hollow. They weren't criminals. They assaulted an Arbites judge, Corvin responds. That's a capital crime. They assembled without permit. That's sedition. They chanted against imperial governance. That's treason. They were criminals the moment they gathered. The law is clear. We enforced it. Our duty is done. If you're feeling the horror of realizing what law enforcement actually means in the Imperium, like this video and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, is this justice or tyranny? Where are you watching from today? The bodies are processed efficiently. The Adeptus Mechanicus sends servitors to harvest anything useful. Organs for transplant, bones for industrial material, flesh for corpse starch processing. Nothing is wasted. The crowd you killed will feed other crowds. The Imperium is efficient that way. You file your report. Judge Captain Vardis reviews it and commends your performance. Appropriate use of force. Situation resolved with minimal Arbites casualties. Well done, Judge Venn. You wanted to argue that the situation didn't need to be resolved with mass execution, that if the Imperium provided adequate food rations, people wouldn't riot, that there must be better solutions than killing protesters. But your training stops you. Questioning orders is the first step toward heresy. You stay silent. Month 2. You're assigned to administrative enforcement, ensuring imperial tithes are collected, that manufactorum quotas are met, that workers report for their assigned shifts. This sounds bureaucratic, almost mundane. It's anything but. You arrive at a manufactorum complex where production has fallen 3% below quota for 2 consecutive months. Your orders are clear. Identify the cause and restore compliance. The manufactorum supervisor meets you nervously. He knows what Arbites attention means. We're doing everything we can, my lord, he stammers. You're not a lord, but everyone calls Arbites judges that. The workers are trying, but we've had equipment failures, and we lost 40 workers to a ceiling collapse last month. We just need time to... Time is not a variable the Imperium recognizes, you interrupt, reciting the legal code you've memorized. Production quotas are absolute. Failure to meet tithe obligations is a crime against the imperial economy. Under Administratum Directive 773, enforcement measures are authorized. You review the manufactorum records. The production shortfall is real, but it's not due to worker laziness or deliberate sabotage. It's because the equipment is ancient and poorly maintained, because workers are literally dying from exhaustion and industrial accidents, because the quotas themselves are unrealistic given the available resources. None of this matters. The law doesn't care about reasons, only results. Enforcement protocol requires decimation, you tell the supervisor. 10% of your workforce will be executed as example. The remaining workers will be expected to increase output to compensate. This is standard procedure. The supervisor's face goes pale. My lord, please. These are good workers, faithful to the Emperor. They're trying their best. Don't add them to the beginning. Don't even try to work hard. Wait for a reason as good as ever. You draw your sidearm and shoot him. 1 round through the forehead. He collapses, dead before he hits the ground. Questioning an Arbites enforcement decision is obstruction of justice. That's a capital crime. The workers are assembled in the main production hall. 3,000 men and boys, all of them terrified. You explain the situation clearly. Production has fallen below quota. Enforcement measures are required. 300 workers will be selected at random and executed. The rest will increase output to meet requirements. You don't feel anything as you make the announcement. The indoctrination has done its work. These aren't people to you anymore. Their resources failing to meet production requirements. Your duty is to restore compliance, not to sympathize with their circumstances. The selection is done by random lottery, the fairest method available. 300 names drawn from the workforce roster. They're brought forward one by one. Some beg, some pray, some accept their fate silently. All are executed. Single shots to the back of the head, efficient and professional. Their bodies will be processed into corpse starch that will feed other workers in other manufactorums. The Imperium wastes nothing. You personally execute 43 of them. Your hand is steady. Your aim is perfect. Each execution is clean, professional, by the book. You feel nothing. You've learned not to feel. Feeling is weakness. Mercy is heresy. You are the law's instrument, and the law demands this. The next month, production increases. The surviving workers, motivated by terror, push themselves beyond normal human limits. Some die from exhaustion, others from industrial accidents caused by rushing. But the quotas are met, compliance is restored, your enforcement action is deemed successful. Judge Captain Vardis commends you again. You've killed more than 350 people in your first 2 months of service. Not a single one of them was what you'd call a criminal in any conventional sense. They were protesters, workers, people who committed crimes of desperation or circumstance. And you executed them all, because the law demanded it. Because compliance must be maintained, because the Imperium's machinery cannot be allowed to falter, regardless of human cost. At night, alone in your quarters in the precinct fortress, you try to process what you've become. You joined the Arbites to protect people. Instead, you're killing them by the hundreds. You wanted to enforce justice. Instead, you're enforcing tyranny with a legal veneer. But there's no one you can talk to about this. Your fellow judges would report you for questioning the righteousness of your actions. Your family back home cannot know the truth. They believe you're a hero, and leaving the Arbites is impossible. Desertion is a capital crime, executed on sight. You're trapped in a career of state-sanctioned violence against the very people you thought you'd protect. Trapped in a system that calls brutality justice and oppression law enforcement. Trapped in a uniform that marks you as a protector, but defines you as an oppressor. You wanted to be a hero. You've become something much darker. And there's no escape, no redemption, no way out except through decades more of this, killing and suppressing and enforcing, until retirement or death frees you from the duty you're now bound to perform. This is the Adeptus Arbites. This is what law enforcement means in the Imperium. This is what you've become, barely 2 months into your service. And you have decades more ahead of you. Year 1. You've lost count of how many people you've killed. The number stopped mattering around 300. Now it's just part of the job, no more remarkable than filing reports or maintaining your equipment. You've been brutalized by a system that demands brutality, hardened by experiences that would have shattered the idealistic 18-year-old who joined the Arbites believing in justice. Your assignments have become routine: riot suppression, tithe enforcement, sedition investigation, heresy prosecution. All of it involves violence, often extreme violence, always justified by legal codes that grant Arbites judges absolute authority to determine guilt and administer punishment. You've learned the dark truth that your training only hinted at. Imperial law isn't designed to create justice, it's designed to maintain control. The Imperium spans 1 million worlds with quadrillions of citizens, most living in conditions that would spark immediate rebellion if people had the energy or resources to rebel. The law exists to prevent that rebellion, to crush dissent before it can spread, to enforce compliance through overwhelming violence. The Arbites are the instrument of that control. You are that instrument, and you've learned to stop questioning it. Today's assignment is sedition investigation in Hab Block 777, a residential complex in the lower hive, housing approximately 80,000 people. Someone has been distributing pamphlets questioning the latest tithe increase, suggesting that perhaps the Imperium's demands are unreasonable, that perhaps local governance should prioritize citizen welfare over imperial quotas. This is sedition, questioning the Imperium's policies, suggesting that local interests should supersede imperial demands. These are crimes that threaten the entire structure of imperial governance. If people start believing they have the right to question tithes, the whole system collapses. Your duty is to find the seditionists and eliminate them before their ideas spread. You deploy with a full enforcement team, 20 judges, supported by combat servitors and armored vehicles. Overkill for investigating one pamphleteer, but the Arbites don't take chances. You cordon off the entire Hab block, sealing all exits, trapping the 80,000 residents inside while you conduct your investigation. The investigation is straightforward. You go door to door, questioning residents, searching habitations, looking for evidence of seditious material or thought. Most people cooperate immediately. They see the Arbites and know that resistance is suicide. They let you search their meager belongings, answer your questions with terrified honesty, pray that you'll move on without arresting them. Some don't cooperate. They assert their rights. The right to privacy in their homes, the right to refuse searches without warrant, the right to legal representation. These are technically rights granted to imperial citizens under certain subsections of the Lex Imperialis, but exercising those rights when an Arbites judge is conducting an investigation is considered obstruction of justice. You execute 12 people for obstruction in the first hour. Simple, efficient. They refuse to cooperate, you shoot them, you move to the next habitation. Their bodies are dragged out and processed later. The message is clear. When the Arbites ask questions, you answer immediately, completely. Rights are theoretical. Compliance is mandatory. By hour 6, you've identified the source of the seditious pamphlets. A man named Torvus, a mid-level administrator in the local tithe collection office. He's educated, literate, capable of complex thought. Dangerous qualities in someone exposed to the Imperium's contradictions and failures. He's been using his position to access information about tithe distribution, and he's concluded that the local population is being overtaxed. that the tithes demanded exceed what local production can sustain. He's not wrong. You've seen the numbers yourself during previous enforcement actions. The tithes demanded from Draconis II have increased 40% over the last decade, while local production has remained static. The math doesn't work. People are starving so the Imperium can collect slightly more resources that will likely be wasted through inefficient distribution anyway. But being right doesn't matter. Torvis questioned imperial policy. That's sedition. His motivations are irrelevant. His accuracy is irrelevant. He committed a crime against the Imperium's authority and he must be punished. You arrest him in his small habitation unit. He doesn't resist. He knew you'd come eventually. He's prepared a written confession, a detailed explanation of his actions, his reasoning, his belief that someone had to speak up about the injustice he witnessed. "I know what you're going to do to me," he says as you secure his restraints. "But someone had to say something. People are dying. Children are starving. The tithes are impossible. Someone had to tell the truth. The truth is what the Imperium defines it to be," you respond automatically. "Your opinions are sedition. Your distribution of illegal materials endangered imperial governance. You will be punished according to the law." "Is this really what you wanted?" he asks, looking at you with pity rather than fear. "When you joined the Arbites, did you want to execute people for telling the truth? Did you want to be the Imperium's hammer, crushing anyone who questions whether children should starve?" You hit him. Shock maul to the stomach, enough voltage to cause pain without permanent damage. He collapses, gasping. You feel nothing. "And shut up," you tell him. "You're a criminal. You don't get to question my duty." But his words linger, because he's right. This isn't what you wanted. This isn't justice. This is silencing dissent with violence. This is protecting a system you know is unjust because the alternative, allowing people to question it, would threaten the entire Imperium. Torvis is executed publicly, standard procedure for sedition. The punishment must be visible to deter others. You take him to the main plaza in Hab Block 777, where thousands of residents have been forcibly assembled to witness. The charge is read aloud. The evidence is presented. There is no trial, no defense, no appeal. You are judge, jury, and executioner, all authority vested in you by the Adeptus Arbites and the Imperium it serves. If you're seeing how the system breaks good people, how it forces them to become monsters in the name of order, like this video and subscribe. Comment below. Tell me if there's ever justification for what he's doing. Where are you watching from today? You execute Torvis with a single shot to the head. His body slumps. The crowd is silent. Terror has that effect. You leave the corpse on display for 3 days as a warning. This is what happens to those who question. This is what happens to those who think they know better than the Imperium. This is what happens to those who value truth over compliance. But the investigation isn't finished. Sedition doesn't exist in isolation. Torvis must have had help, must have distributed his material to others, must have corrupted additional people with his dangerous ideas. You're required to root out all connections, ensure the sedition hasn't spread. You implement collective punishment, standard protocol when tracking sedition networks. You arrest everyone who had contact with Torvis in the month before his crimes were discovered. Co-workers, neighbors, family members, casual acquaintances. 217 people total. Some of them definitely knew about his activities. Most probably didn't. All are arrested anyway. The interrogations are brutal. You're trained in techniques that maximize pain while minimizing permanent damage. Electrical stimulation, chemical enhancement, psychological pressure, physical stress, positions. The goal is to determine who knew about Torvis's sedition, who helped him, who received his materials and failed to report them. Most of the arrested are innocent. They had casual contact with Torvis but no knowledge of his activities. but proving innocence requires surviving interrogation and satisfying your determination that they pose no ongoing threat. 73 don't survive. They die during questioning from heart failure, shock, complications from the interrogation techniques. Their innocence is noted in the final reports, but it doesn't matter. They're dead anyway. The survivors are categorized. 31 are determined to have had knowledge of Torvus's activities, even if they didn't actively participate. That's guilt by association, a crime under Imperial law. They're executed. Another 68 are determined to be potential future seditionists, based on psychological profiles, education levels, or suspicious answers during interrogation. They're executed preemptively. The remaining 45 are released with permanent marks on their loyalty records. They'll be under surveillance for the rest of their lives, suspects forever, even though they committed no crime. The entire operation, from initial investigation to final executions, takes 3 weeks. You've killed 248 people, 1 actual seditionist and 247 people whose only crime was knowing him or being deemed potentially dangerous. This is considered a successful operation. Judge Captain Vardis commends your thoroughness. You're promoted to Judge Arbitrator, a rank that grants you command authority over small enforcement teams. You've proven yourself effective, capable, willing to do what's necessary. You've killed efficiently, investigated thoroughly, enforced without mercy. You're exactly what the Arbites wants its judges to be. But you're not human anymore. Not really. The capacity for empathy has been beaten out of you through constant exposure to suffering that you're powerless to prevent and brutality that you're required to inflict. You've learned to see people as statistics, as compliance problems, as potential threats. You've internalized the Imperium's brutal logic so completely that you can execute innocent people without emotional reaction, can torture suspects without guilt, can suppress riots by killing children without hesitation. Your family back home still writes occasionally. Your father's letters are full of pride. My son, the Arbiter's judge. You're keeping the Imperium safe. You're protecting the innocent. The Emperor must be proud of you. He has no idea what you actually do. No concept that his son executes more innocent people than criminals, that your duty is oppression rather than protection, that you've become everything you once despised. You don't correct him. What would be the point? The truth would destroy him. Better he believes the lie. Better he thinks you're a hero. Better he never knows what his son has become. You've tried to hold on to your original ideals, tried to convince yourself that you're still serving justice, just in ways that are necessary given the Imperium's scale and complexity. Tried to believe that the brutality is unfortunate but required, that without the Arbites' iron enforcement, the entire Imperium would collapse into chaos. Sometimes you almost believe it. When you suppress a riot, before it can spread and kill thousands, when you execute a truly dangerous criminal, a murderer, a rapist, a heretic, someone who genuinely deserved punishment, when your enforcement prevents a situation from escalating into something worse. But most of the time, you know the truth. You're not serving justice. You're serving a tyrannical system that grinds up human lives to maintain its own existence. You're a bully with legal authority, enforcing laws designed to crush rather than protect, wearing the uniform of justice while committing legal atrocities. And you can't stop. Can't quit. Can't even really resist. You're trapped in this career, bound by oath and law to continue serving until death or retirement. Desertion is execution. Refusing orders is execution. Even questioning too openly is grounds for investigation and likely execution. You're caught in the Imperium's machinery, just another component performing its designated function, grinding up human lives to keep the vast system operating. You wanted to be different. You wanted to matter. You wanted to make things better. Instead, You've become exactly what the Imperium needed. A brutal enforcer who kills without question, suppresses without mercy, enforces laws that serve power rather than justice. You're the Adeptus Arbites. You are the law, and you've learned that in the Imperium, the law is just tyranny wearing a badge. Year 5. Your judge-arbitrator Marcus Venn, decorated veteran of the Adeptus Arbites, commander of a 20-judge enforcement team, responsible for maintaining order in sectors housing 60 million people. Your record is exemplary. Your loyalty is beyond question. Your effectiveness is undeniable. You're everything the Arbites could want in a judge. You're also a monster. You know this. You've accepted it. You've stopped fighting against what you've become and learned to embrace it. Because the alternative, maintaining some pretense of humanity, some connection to the idealistic boy who joined the Arbites believing in justice, is simply too painful. Easier to be the monster. Easier to stop feeling entirely. Your current assignment is tax enforcement in the commercial districts of Hive Draconis 7's middle levels. The Administratum has identified shortfalls in revenue collection. Merchants who underreport their earnings, who hide inventory to avoid taxation, who bribe local officials to overlook violations. This represents theft from the Imperial Treasury, a crime that demands severe punishment. You deploy with your team to the Merchant Quarter, a relatively prosperous area where traders sell goods to the middle hive's workers and lower administrators. These aren't wealthy people by any standard. They scrape together meager profits from narrow margins, compete desperately for customers, work brutal hours to maintain their businesses. But they have more than the lower hive's destitute masses, which makes them targets for imperial taxation. The enforcement action is systematic. You seal the quarter, preventing anyone from leaving, then go business to business conducting audits. Most merchants have committed some violation. Underreporting is nearly universal because the tax rates are so high that full compliance would bankrupt most operations. You could execute them all according to the strict letter of the law, but you've learned to exercise discretion. Killing every merchant would disrupt commerce, reduce long-term tax revenue, create economic instability. Instead, you implement a selective enforcement strategy. Major violators are executed publicly as examples. Minor violators receive massive fines that will bankrupt them, but leave them alive. Those who've bribed local officials are executed along with the officials themselves. Everyone else receives warnings and threats of future enforcement if violations continue. This approach isn't mercy, it's calculated pragmatism. You're maximizing long-term compliance while minimizing short-term disruption. You're not protecting merchants, you're protecting the imperial tax base. Your motivations are entirely selfish from the Imperium's perspective, which is exactly what the Arbites wants. During the enforcement action, you encounter a merchant named Hadric. He runs a small shop selling reclaimed tools and equipment, serving the local worker population. Your audit reveals he's underreported his income by approximately 30% over the last 3 years, evading tens of thousands of imperial credits and taxes. This is a capital crime. The penalty is execution and seizure of all assets. You have absolute authority to administer that penalty immediately. Hadric knows this. He's terrified. "Please, my lord," he begs. "I have a family, 3 children. My elderly father lives with us. I only underreported because the tax rates are impossible. If I paid fully, I'd go bankrupt within months. I'm barely surviving as it is. Please, show mercy." Mercy. The word hits you like a physical blow. You haven't shown mercy in 5 years, haven't even considered it. Mercy is weakness, you are taught. Mercy is heresy. The law is absolute. But something about this man, his desperate fear, his willingness to beg, his admission of guilt without excuse, touches something you thought had died. A fragment of the boy who joined the Arbites to help people. A last ember of humanity buried under years of brutality. You make a decision that violates your training. I'm fining you double the evaded amount. You have 6 months to pay. If you fail, I'll return and execute you personally. Do you understand?" Podrick's relief is palpable. "Yes, my lord. Thank you. Emperor bless you. Thank you." You move on to the next business, but the decision haunts you. You showed mercy. You bent the law to accommodate circumstance. You exercised judgment rather than following strict enforcement protocol. These are the first steps toward corruption, according to Arbites' doctrine. These are how good judges fall. If you're seeing the impossible position corrupt the law through mercy or remain monstrous through strict enforcement, like this video and subscribe. Tell me in the comments what you would do. Where are you watching from today? The rest of the enforcement action proceeds according to plan. You execute 43 merchants and 17 corrupt officials. You impose crippling fines on hundreds more. You restore tax compliance through overwhelming violence and economic destruction. The operation is considered highly successful. The administratum is pleased with the increased revenue. Judge Captain Vardis commends your effectiveness, but you've changed. That single act of mercy, letting Hadrick live, has cracked the shell you've built around your remaining humanity. You start noticing things you've trained yourself to ignore. The suffering you cause, the innocents who die alongside the guilty, the system's fundamental injustice. You continue enforcing, but now you're haunted by what you do. Every execution raises questions you've suppressed for years. Was this person truly guilty or just desperate? Was death really necessary or just convenient? Am I serving justice or just protecting a tyrannical system? Your team notices the change. You're slower to use lethal force, more likely to investigate thoroughly before executing, occasionally showing leniency when strict enforcement isn't required. They're concerned. This isn't how veteran judges behave. This is how judges begin falling to corruption. Judge Sergeant Corvin, your old mentor, now your subordinate, confronts you privately. "You're getting soft, Ven. I've seen it before. Good judges who start questioning, who show mercy, who think they can improve the system, it always ends the same way. Either you recover your dedication to absolute enforcement, or you become a liability that must be eliminated." "I'm still effective," you argue. "My team's performance metrics are excellent. Compliance rates in my sectors are higher than average. I am doing my duty." "For now," Corvin says. "But mercy is a disease. It spreads. First, you let one merchant live when you should have executed him. Then you hesitate during a riot suppression. Then you question orders. Then you're standing before a tribunal facing execution for corruption. I'm warning you because I trained you. Get your head straight. Be the judge the Imperium needs, not the man you wish you could be." He's right. You know he's right. The Imperium doesn't need merciful judges. It needs brutal enforcers who kill without hesitation, who maintain order through overwhelming violence, who serve the system absolutely regardless of personal feelings. But you can't go back. The crack in your conditioning has widened. You've remembered what it feels like to choose mercy, to exercise judgment, to see people as people rather than compliance problems. And once you've remembered, you can't unremember. You try to maintain the appearance of dutiful enforcement while privately subverting the system in small ways, letting people escape who should be arrested, failing to follow up on minor violations, occasionally accepting explanations rather than demanding executions. You're not sabotaging operations. You're still effective, still maintaining order, still ensuring compliance. You're just doing it with the absolute minimum violence necessary rather than the maximum violence permitted. It's a dangerous game. The Arbites monitors its judges constantly, watching for signs of corruption or deviation from absolute enforcement standards. Your performance is scrutinized through reports, team observations, automated analysis of your enforcement patterns. You're good at hiding your mercy. You've learned to disguise leniency as strategic pragmatism, to frame your reduced violence as efficiency rather than compassion. But you're walking a razor's edge. One mistake, one subordinate reporting your hesitation, one enforcement action where your mercy causes a situation to escalate, any of these could trigger an investigation. And Arbites' investigations of their own. Judges are thorough, brutal, and almost always end in execution. Year 7. You've maintained your balancing act for 2 years now, appearing to be a dutiful judge while secretly exercising mercy whenever possible. Serving the Imperium while quietly subverting its most brutal demands, walking the line between duty and humanity. Then you receive an assignment that will shatter that careful balance. A full-scale compliance operation in Hab Block 333 suspected of harboring seditionists and underreporting population for tax purposes. Your orders are clear. Conduct a census, identify all discrepancies, execute all seditionists and anyone who harbored them, and ensure future compliance through whatever means necessary. The Habdrock houses approximately 100,000 people. Intelligence suggests population underreporting of 10 to 15%. Thousands of unregistered residents who don't appear on Imperial records, who haven't been paying taxes, who are essentially illegal inhabitants. The underreporting is almost certainly motivated by poverty rather than sedition. Families hiding extra children, workers avoiding registration to escape forced labor conscription, refugees from other sectors seeking shelter. But motivation doesn't matter under Imperial law. Unregistered population is fraud. Fraud is a crime. The penalty is death. You deploy with a massive enforcement contingent, 200 judges, supported by combat servitors, armored vehicles, and local militia conscripts. You seal the entire Habdrock, cutting power and water, preventing any entry or exit. Then you begin the census. The operation takes 3 weeks. Going door to door, counting residents, comparing the count to official records, investigating discrepancies. You find exactly what intelligence predicted. Thousands of unregistered people hiding in overcrowded habitations, living in walls and maintenance shafts, concealed by families who knew that registration meant death or forced labor. According to your orders, they should all be executed. All the unregistered people and all those who harbored them. That's tens of thousands of deaths, maybe 30 or 40,000 people, most of them children, all of them guilty only of trying to survive in a system that offers them no legal way to exist. You face a choice. Follow your orders and execute tens of thousands of people for the crime of being born in the wrong place at the wrong time, or show mercy, underreport the discrepancies, let most of them live. The first option is legal, duty-bound, exactly what the Arbites expects. The second option is merciful, humane, and absolutely forbidden. For 3 days you wrestle with the decision. You walk the Habdrock corridors, seeing the unregistered people, children hiding in walls, elderly refugees who fled some other atrocity, workers who avoided registration because forced labor would kill them. They're not criminals. They're victims of a system so brutal that even existing legally is sometimes impossible. You make your decision. You're going to underreport. You're going to save them. You falsify the census data, reporting only a small fraction of the unregistered population. You execute those few as examples, enough to satisfy your superiors that enforcement action was taken, not so many that you've committed the genocide your orders demanded. You file your report, claiming the intelligence was exaggerated, that the actual underreporting was minimal and has been corrected. It's a massive violation of your duty, falsifying official reports, failing to enforce Imperial law fully, showing mercy when absolute brutality was required. If discovered, you'll be executed, but you can't bring yourself to kill 40,000 people for being bored. For the first time in years, you sleep well that night. You've saved lives. You've shown mercy. You've been the judge you wanted to be when you joined the Arbites, not the monster the Imperium tried to make you. It feels right. In a way, nothing has felt right for years. You have no idea that your career, and possibly your life, is now on a countdown to destruction, because mercy, in the Imperium, is the most dangerous corruption of all. Year 10. You've been walking the razor's edge for 5 years now, showing mercy where you can, falsifying reports to save lives, subverting the system you're sworn to enforce. You've saved thousands of people who should have been executed. You've maintained order with the minimum violence necessary rather than the maximum violence permitted. You've tried to be something other than a monster in a system designed to produce monsters. And now you're facing the consequences. The Internal Affairs Division of the Adeptus Arbites has been investigating you for 6 months. You didn't know. Internal affairs investigations are classified, conducted in absolute secrecy until they're ready to move. They've been reviewing your case files, examining your enforcement patterns, analyzing statistical anomalies in your compliance reports, interviewing your subordinates. They've found irregularities, compliance rates that are too good, suggesting underreporting of violations, casualty rates that are too low, suggesting mercy where absolute enforcement was required, witnesses who report you hesitating, questioning orders, occasionally letting violators escape punishment. Look suspicious written, or missing some paragraphs. Witnesses who report you hesitating, questioning orders, occasionally letting violators escape punishment. None of it is conclusive. You've been careful, you've covered your tracks as well as possible, but the pattern is there. The statistical analysis shows deviations from expected enforcement standards. You're either incompetent or corrupt, and your record of effectiveness eliminates incompetence as an explanation. You're summoned to Precinct Fortress Command, ostensibly for a routine performance review. You recognize the setup immediately. Internal Affairs doesn't announce investigations until they're ready to make arrests. This is it. The end of your career, probably the end of your life. The interview chamber is stark, designed for interrogation rather than conversation. 3 senior judges sit across from you, internal affairs investigators with decades of experience identifying corruption in their own ranks. Their armor bears the marks of long service. Their eyes carry the flat certainty of men who've executed hundreds of their fellow judges for deviation from absolute standards. Judge Inquisitor Ravicol leads the investigation. He's legendary within the Arbites. 60 years of service, personally responsible for purging 24 corrupt judges, absolute in his dedication to enforcement standards. He looks at you with the same expression you've used when examining seditionists. You're being evaluated as a potential threat to be eliminated. Judge Arbitrator Venn, Ravicol begins, your enforcement record shows concerning patterns. Statistical analysis indicates deviation from expected casualty rates, underreporting of violations, uncharacteristic leniency in situations demanding absolute suppression. Explain these anomalies. You could lie. You could claim the anomalies are due to improved efficiency, better intelligence, strategic pragmatism. You could defend yourself, try to survive this investigation. You're good at lying. 5 years of hiding your mercy has made you expert at justifying decisions that technically violate enforcement protocols. But you're tired. Tired of the violence, tired of the pretense, tired of being a monster pretending to be a judge pretending to be just. The crack in your conditioning that started 5 years ago with one act of mercy has grown into a chasm. You can't go back to what you were. You can't continue pretending to be what the Imperium needs. So you tell the truth. I've been showing mercy, you say flatly. Whenever possible, whenever I could justify it in reports. I've chosen the least violent option. I've underreported violations, falsified census data, let people escape who should have been executed. I've violated my oath and my duty deliberately and repeatedly over the last 5 years. I'm guilty of corruption by Arbites standards. I admit it. The silence in the room is absolute. Ravicol stares at you with something approaching shock. Corrupt judges usually fight the charges, deny everything, try to escape. You've just confessed to capital crimes without prompting, without pressure, without even an attempt at defense. Why? Ravachol asks finally. You were an exemplary judge. Your early record was perfect. What corrupted you? I remembered what justice actually means, you respond. I remembered that laws are supposed to protect people, not crush them. I remembered that the Imperium's demands are often impossible and always brutal. I couldn't keep being the monster you needed me to be, so I tried to be something else. You tried to be merciful, Ravachol says. It's not a question. You understand that mercy is weakness, that the Imperium cannot be maintained through compassion, that absolute enforcement is the only thing preventing collapse into chaos? I understand the argument, you say. I used to believe it, but I've seen what absolute enforcement actually means. I've executed children for being born to the wrong parents. I've killed workers for failing impossible quotas. I've suppressed riots by people who were just hungry, scared, desperate. That's not law enforcement. That's tyranny. And I couldn't keep participating in it. If you're feeling the weight of this moment, confession, as the only escape from intolerable duty, like this video and subscribe. Comment below whether he's brave or foolish. Where are you watching from today? Ravachol is silent for a long moment. Then, your corruption has been comprehensive. You've saved lives that should have ended. You've failed to enforce laws that maintain imperial stability. You've placed individual suffering above systemic necessity. Under Adeptus Arbites regulations, you should be executed immediately. I know. However, Ravachol continues, and something in his tone makes you look up. Your confession is unusual. Most corrupt judges lie, fight, try to escape. You've admitted your crimes openly. This suggests your corruption stems from misguided idealism rather than selfish interests. There may be value in understanding your perspective before administering punishment. This is unexpected. You were certain you'd be executed within the hour. Instead, Ravachol seems genuinely curious about your motivations. Explain your reasoning, he orders. Why do you believe mercy is compatible with duty? Why do you think the Imperium's laws are unjust? You organize your thoughts, then speak honestly for the first time in years. The Imperium's laws serve the Imperium's survival, not the citizens' welfare. I understand why. The galaxy is hostile, resources are limited, control must be maintained. But the cost is tens of billions of lives crushed by laws designed to extract maximum compliance, regardless of human suffering. We enforce taxation that causes starvation. We suppress protests against impossible conditions. We execute people for crimes of desperation. We call this justice, but it's just power maintaining itself through violence. Yes, Ravachol agrees. That's exactly what it is. And I don't think that's sustainable. You can maintain order through terror for a time, but eventually people break. Eventually the brutality creates more problems than it solves. Eventually, you're killing so many people just to maintain the system that the system stops being worth maintaining. So you believe the Imperium is unjust. I believe the Imperium is necessary and evil simultaneously. I believe we need order on the scale only the Imperium can provide, and I believe the methods used to maintain that order are monstrous. Both things are true. I just couldn't keep being the monster. Ravachol stands, walks to the room's narrow window overlooking the hive. Do you know how many judges I've executed for corruption over my career, Ven? No, sir. 47. Most of them took bribes, showed favoritism, abused their authority for personal gain. Those were simple cases, selfish corruption, easily identified and eliminated. But I've also executed 3 judges who showed mercy, like you, who couldn't stomach the brutality our duty demands, who tried to enforce justly rather than absolutely. He turns back to you. Those three haunted me. They weren't corrupt in the usual sense. They were idealists who broke under the weight of what we're required to do. I executed them because the law demands it, because mercy is weakness, because the Imperium cannot function if judges start making individual moral judgments. But I wondered if maybe they were right, if maybe absolute enforcement creates more problems than it solves. You stare at him. Is he suggesting he has doubts? Is this a trap, trying to get you to expand on your confession? I don't know if you're right, Rabacol continues. I don't know if mercy is compatible with our duty, but I know that executing another idealist won't answer those questions, so I'm making an unusual decision. You will be transferred to a punishment battalion. Arbites judges who've committed minor infractions, assigned to the most dangerous enforcement operations as penance. You'll serve there for 5 years. If you survive, we'll discuss whether you can return to normal duty. If you die, the problem resolves itself. You can barely process this. You confessed to capital crimes. You should be dead. Instead, you're being given a chance to survive, to continue serving, to prove that mercy doesn't have to mean betrayal of duty. I don't understand, you say. Why not just execute me? Because the Imperium needs judges who can think, who can adapt, who understand that absolute enforcement sometimes creates more problems than it solves. We need brutal enforcers. The majority of our work requires them. But we also need judges who can exercise judgment, who understand that the law serves the Imperium's survival, not some abstract notion of legal purity. You might be that kind of judge, or you might just be corrupt and weak. The Punishment Battalion will determine which. The Punishment Battalion is Hell. Officially called the Redemption Cohort, it consists of Arbites judges who've committed infractions serious enough to warrant punishment, but not serious enough to warrant execution. All of them have been given the same choice: serve in the cohort for a specified period, or face immediate execution. Most choose service. Most die anyway. The cohort is assigned the worst enforcement operations, suppressions in hive sectors where normal judge teams would face unacceptable casualties, investigations in regions controlled by powerful gangs or heretical cults, counterinsurgency against separatist movements, anything where the Arbites expects heavy casualties and wants to preserve their regular judges for less suicidal operations. Your first mission with the cohort: suppressing a full-scale rebellion in Hive Secundus, a neighboring hive world where workers have seized control of an entire hive city. 2 billion people in open revolt against imperial authority, armed with stolen weapons, organized by charismatic leaders, willing to fight to the death rather than return to the brutal conditions that sparked the rebellion. The imperial response is absolute: orbital bombardment to soften defenses, guard regiments for ground assault, and Arbites cohorts for urban pacification, going building by building, executing rebels, restoring control through overwhelming violence. Your cohort deploys with 300 judges. You're not expected to survive. The rebellion is too large, too organized, too desperate. The cohort's mission isn't to win. It's to inflict enough casualties and create enough fear to break the rebellion's morale before the guard finishes the job. The fighting is brutal, urban combat at its worst. Ambushes in every corridor, snipers in every window, improvised explosives turning entire buildings into death traps. The rebels fight with desperate courage, knowing that capture means execution, that defeat means their families will be punished, that they're fighting for survival rather than victory. You fight alongside judges who are also serving penance. Each has their own story: corruption, excessive mercy, questioning orders, showing weakness. All of them trying to survive long enough to redeem themselves, knowing they're being used as expendable assets, accepting it because the alternative was immediate execution. You survive 6 months of urban combat. The cohort's casualties are catastrophic. 230 judges dead, only 70 surviving to rotate out. You've killed hundreds of rebels, seen horrors that exceed anything in your previous service, fought in conditions that make normal enforcement operations look gentle. But something changes during those 6 months. You're no longer conflicted about your duty. You've found a middle ground between absolute enforcement and merciful corruption. You kill when necessary. You show restraint when possible. You enforce the law while trying to minimize suffering. You're not the brutal enforcer you were in your first years, not the corrupted idealist you became later. You're something in between, a judge who understands both the necessity of order and the cost of maintaining it. The rebellion is crushed. The survivors are executed or enslaved. Order is restored through overwhelming violence, just as the Imperium demands. You return to Draconis 7 to complete your punishment service, having survived what most judges in the cohort don't. The cohort, one final time, if this story has shown you the impossible position of serving unjust laws or becoming a criminal yourself, leave a comment, like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this with someone who needs to understand that some systems trap you completely, that some duties destroy you whether you fulfill them or resist them. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you would have done in his position. Year 15 of service. You've completed your punishment battalion assignment. You've been restored to active duty, assigned back to regular enforcement operations. You're still an Arbites judge, still enforcing Imperial law, still serving the Imperium's brutal machinery. But you're different now. You enforce with pragmatism rather than absolutism. You show mercy when you can, brutality when you must. You've learned to balance duty and humanity in ways that serve both the Imperium and the people you're supposed to protect. It's not justice. The Imperium doesn't do justice, but it's better than the alternative. Better than the monsters who enforce absolutely, better than the idealists who break under the weight of their own compassion. You are Judge Arbitrator Marcus Venn. You joined the Arbites believing in justice. You learned that justice is irrelevant in the Imperium. You almost broke trying to be merciful, and you found a way to survive while maintaining some fragment of humanity. You're still trapped, still bound by oath to serve until death, still enforcing laws you know are unjust, still killing people who don't deserve death, still the Imperium's instrument of oppression. But you're no longer just a monster. You're a monster with limitations, with boundaries, with enough humanity left to make choices that matter. It's not redemption. It's not salvation. It's just survival with the smallest possible amount of honor. And in the Imperium, that's the best anyone can hope for. Forever.